Hello and welcome to another Parousia Podcast. I'm Charbel Raish, your host. And welcome to all those viewers and listeners, those across the EWTN platforms, Asia Pacific, and those across the many other podcasting platforms. We're here every single week bringing you an inspirational story or a guest. Live in the studio with me now is a very good friend of mine and the author of a brand new book being just released, The Architect Revealed, October 13. An office worker reveals his story after being cursed by Freemasons. It's Edward Borovnjak. He's a good friend of mine, and you may have known him online with the story, Muslim taxi driver led me to church. And from there, I remember hearing about it, obviously with my background and my Islamic background. But I wanted to meet this man, and this was years ago, and then we met finally, and we had him on our podcast to share his testimony. It was moving, but now he's written a book, and I'm very honored to have him in the studio with me. I know him as Eddie. So Eddie, great to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Charbel, for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and looking forward to talking more about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I might share the fact that what I'm blessed and honored to have this opportunity with you is that recently, you've been diagnosed with cancer, and so you've been told by the doctors you've only got a limited time to live. Could you just tell us a bit about the update of your health status and where that's at, and why this is a special opportunity for us to meet now?
Yeah, look, I actually discovered I had the cancer about 7 years ago, but the doctors did a great job. They cut it out, and we were having ongoing tests. So for over 6 years I was cancer-free, and they've effectively told me I was cured. But about this time last year, I think it's about July, I started to have some pain in my back, and I was lifting some heavy furniture, so I thought, okay, it's just a hurt back. But my local GP sent me for a scan, and they found that there was lots of spots inside my pelvis, and it looked like cancer. So they did a biopsy and actually found that it was cancer. And would you believe it, it's actually the same cancer that I had all those years back that had come back. And by this point, it was all in my spine, my pelvis, in parts of my lungs, my shoulders, and it just continued to spread. But the doctors are real troopers, they're real fighters. They put me on chemotherapy, hormone therapies, radiation treatment, and a lot of it helped. A lot of it gave me more mobility and time with my kids. I've got 3 beautiful sons. I've got I've got my mum. I've got Lisa. So I had a lot of support, a lot of help at home. But unfortunately, just recently, a few weeks ago, they found that I started to have some more symptoms, and they took out a sample of something called the cerebral spinal fluid, CSF, and they found the cancer had spread into there, and they said the prognosis of that's not good. There's effectively now no cure from a medical point of view. So I've got a matter of weeks, maybe a month or so to live, according to the doctors. But you know and I know Jesus can do all things, yes. But I'm completely accepting for whatever that His will is, yes. And yes. Whether He chooses to take me now, whether He chooses to give me more time, I'm perfectly content and happy to do His will. In the meantime, we can offer sufferings up. So I've been greatly inspired by saints like St. Therese of Lisieux, yes. Young St. Jacinta, and in the midst of all their sufferings, they always offered sufferings up. And I don't do a good job as them, but I do my best, and I try to do the best I can each day.
God bless you. Praise God. And it's the one thing that struck me was you're at peace with this decision. You're at peace with this. It seems that and thank God, your faith is the bedrock. It's giving you the strength here, and it's very inspiring for me personally just to see you accepting of this. Many people will be very angry, but you seem to be accepting whatever God's will is, and that's a beautiful place to be in. So no, God bless you. We're praying for you, and thank you for even taking time in this time, in precious time right now. We're praying for you and keep going.
Thanks, Charbel. Yeah, I'm praying for you as well, and for your mission here. The first time I've been to the offices here, it's been an absolute blessing to see what you do, in this new environment you've got.
Yeah, thank you.
I keep praying that you get more support and you can keep evangelising and for you and your team and your family. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if anyone's watching, please pray for our office here. We don't own it here. We are only temporary, I guess, tenants here, but we pray that we'll be able to stay here long term, and the Sisters of Mercy who own the property are selling. So we pray that something will happen where we can somehow be able to remain here if God wills it. So please God, that will happen. So please pray, viewers and those watching. You did when we first met, we did interview you about your story. So those can watch that first interview where we did in the Voice of Charity Studios. And you touched on various things. It was quite an eye-opening story and touched many people. But now you've written a book, and just why this book? And I'm intrigued by the title. The Architect Revealed, and then you've got this date, October 13, and then this link to Freemasonry. We never really touched on that in our first interview. Yeah. So why this book and why the title?
That's a great question, Charbel. Because when I set out to write the book, God inspired me to write a book. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if I told you this in the first interview, but I actually met this man in the city. I was praying in St. Mary's Cathedral, and one of my prayers was, God, what can I do? How can I help?
Yes.
And I heard a little voice in my head said, go to the little shop in St. Mary's Cathedral. There's a little like a piety shop. Mm. Buy some rosary beads, buy how to pray the rosary card, put some money into it, and put it in an envelope and give it to the first homeless person you see. And so I did. I bought a $1 rosary card, the best dollar I've ever spent. I bought rosary beads, put some money in there, and I set out to find this homeless person. And I walked, and I found this man sitting on the corner of Hunter and Charbel Raish Street, really down and out, no shoes, he was quite dirty, and I thought this must be the man. So I sat with him for a bit, and he told me a bit of his story. He was actually a train driver, but he got arthritis, and they just sacked him. He said that he could have got treatment, but they just sacked him. And he lost his missus, and I think his best friend, there's a story there that happened. Anyway, he said to me, something's just come over me like I have to pray. And I thought, this must be for you. So I took out the rosary beads, I gave it to him, and I explained the rosary, and I told him what happened to me. And at the end, he goes, Eddie, that's a really inspirational story. He said, you should write a book. Actually, he didn't know my name at the time. He said, you should write a book. Anyway, it came time to part ways, and I said, what's your name? And he goes, Eddie. And I said, no way, that's my name too. So we had a bit of a joke, two words are better than one.
Yes.
And as I'm walking away from this man, I just felt this beautiful feeling come down from above, like this blessed feeling with my whole body. And I took it to be a sign from God that he wants me to hand out rosary beads. So I went to Parousia, I bought more rosary beads, giving them out to people. But sure enough, it was coming up to the feast day of St. Mary of the Cross. So I decided to go back to the city and hand out, tell people, just go to the church, because that's where I went when I was healed from fibro. Go to the church, pray, and you watch. Your prayers will be answered. Yeah. Anyway, the who do I bump into? There's Ed. Ed. And he said to me, he goes, Eddie, you can't just send people to go to this church to get healed. He goes, it doesn't work like that. And I said, it happened to me. And he said, he goes, no. He goes, your story's a bit more like Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For everything there's a season and a time for every matter under heaven. And I thought, wow, the first time I met him, he doesn't, he didn't know to pray. Now he's quoting scripture at me. And anyway, I sat down with him, and he goes, you should write a book. You should write a book.
Again.
And when he told me this, I felt that beautiful feeling go through me again. But I got confused the first time. I thought God was wanting me to have the rosary beads, but no, I made the connection a bit slow sometimes. And I thought, okay, I've got to write this book. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, what can I do for you? And he goes, he just wanted hot chocolate. So I bought him a hot chocolate. And he said, if you need me again, I'll just be around. Like he just said, in this kind of mysterious way. Anyway, so then that was sort of my mission to start writing the book.
How long ago was that?
It was quite a few years ago now.
Okay.
It was quite a few years. I went to Father Peter. I told him what happened.
Yep.
And Father Peter said, you can write a story, but don't make the YouTube video just yet. Mm-hmm. And because I always like running it by Father Peter just to make sure things. So I didn't write the book at that point, but I did a short YouTube video which you can probably see online. Even that was not done straight away. It was done with Father Peter's permission.
What's that called, the YouTube video?
Muslim taxi driver sent me to church.
That's the one that made, that's the one that I remember watching, yep.
Yeah, and but yeah, then later on, the same-sex marriage debate came, and I just felt compelled. I have to share my story, you know. But then Father Peter gave me permission, and I made a video about that. So which was actually that video. That was sort of the response.
Yeah.
And when I shared it, I got most interesting responses. Some people loved it. Some people called me up and said, "Take the video off." But you're going to get that, I guess, sometimes. Yes. But so that was sort of the inspiration for that first video. And Father Peter didn't give me permission at that point to write a book, to hold off. But then he did, and I ended up writing a short story about the book, like a 10-20 page story. And I thought, okay, I ticked that box. I ticked the YouTube video. What's next? You know, I thought that I've done God's will. What do I do now? And I had a few people interested in, you know, forming a relationship. You know, I was thinking about becoming maybe a friar. Father Peter said maybe become a deacon. So I had all these thoughts and questions in my mind. And I met a priest in confession once, and he said you should do something called the discernment of, there's a book called The Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And in that book there's a discernment process.
Yes.
And I decided to do it. And there's two questions I had in my life. What do I do in my life? Like, what state of life does God want me in?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I actually do? So and it was very clear, and I try to do it as best I can. The prayers, follow the instructions, and so on. And for me, at the end, was very clear: stay single and chaste. No more girlfriends. No more, just stay single and chaste. And what to do with my life was actually to publish a proper book. You know, not just like a short story. And to make more YouTube videos and to do good works. And so I did. I set out to do it, and I thought initially when I set out to do the book, I'm a numbers man. You know, I'm not a writer. I'm more into the numbers, and I thought, okay, do some calculations. This is going to take 6 months. You know, 5, 6, 7 months. So I thought, okay, that'll be done. But it took a few months, more months than that.
But was it close to a year in the end, or? In
the end, it was more like 6 years.
6 years.
I met a very holy Franciscan friar called Brother Dominic Lavac.
Oh yes,
he
good man.
He lives as a hermit now in Condobolin, and I had an opportunity to stay with him. And he said, "Eddie, a good spiritual book takes years to mature." And I didn't know what that meant, but now I do.
Wow, there you go.
And but he was a great inspiration, and the title for the video. For the book actually came from him. He was in prayer one day, and he comes out and goes, "Eddie, I've got the title for your book." And the title was "The Architect Revealed," October 13. And this Eddie and I, we added the last bit in as well.
Yeah, to give people context. Yeah, you were an office worker, and how Freemasons influenced you.
How I was cursed. And so that's sort of the inspiration for the title.
Okay, that's good to know.
And the other conflict I had at the time was, what do I put in the book? You know, I had I've got 3 lovely, beautiful children. You know, I've got my family, I've got my sister, I've got Lisa. You know, all these beautiful people in my life. And I didn't know what to put in. You know, one part of me wanted to put in all the dark places I was at, to give glory to God, to show people this is what He pulled me out of, you know, and hopefully inspire other people who may have family members in that situation.
Yes. Yeah, it's very powerful. I mean, I remember again encourage people to watch not only that video but the podcast we did. But yeah, what else? What was the other reason?
And the podcast was great. And so then. So the other reason was, where do I finish? You know, how much do I cover? So I ended up deciding, put all the background in there, including the drug use, including how far I fell down, and also then go to all the good, all the uplifting stuff, you know, what God's done afterwards. But again, I wasn't 100% sure exactly what, you know, how much do I put in.
Yes.
So then I met one man who said to pray for the holy souls in purgatory, and that they can obtain for you great graces from God. So I did. I offered. I think it was. It's in the book, the exact number. I think it was something like 135 masses, and
Wow.
and I asked them to pray for my vocation. And Charbel, after I offered those masses, the most amazing thing happened. Anything I touched just worked out. You know, I'd give out miraculous matters beforehand, and people look at it funny, and now they're just taking it, thinking, "Wow, what's this?" You know, putting it on. One man came up to me after mass. He goes, "Eddie, I just want to let you know I went to confession and it's just changed my life." And I thought, "This is amazing." But then I realised, the masses, it's God's grace. It's nothing to do with me.
Wow.
And then at the end of that, a week or two later, I was walking outside of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I met this lady who I know, but she's talking Croatian, and my Croatian is not the best, but I can understand.
So you have a Croatian background?
Yeah, my mum's Croatian, my dad's Slovenian.
Okay.
And she said she's going to offer these masses for this man, 33 masses to be precise. But I just knew I have to do that for me. I just knew.
Yes.
So I go home. I offer 33 masses through Aid to the Church in Need for
yeah.
And the intention was healing and reparation of sin. And the very next day, would you believe, I wrote the whole book in a day, like something I was struggling for weeks. So each chapter had a header, a description of the chapter, and more than that, I had this, I guess you call it a gift, or God gave me the ability to remember things that happened 7 or 8 years ago, like exact words to conversations, as if we're just having it now. And then I could see how my life fit together, and I could see how Freemasonry had impacted my life, and how I was invited to join the Freemasons, and I could see the curses, and I could see all how everything, you know, that was sort of the start of the fall of Eddie. But at the time, I was completely oblivious to Freemasonry. You know, I just thought it was a group of men helping each other out and so on.
That's interesting, because this is important for us to know, because we didn't really spend time on this in the first interview a few years ago, but this is important, that what you're about to reveal. Many people have different views about what Freemasonry is, and some, for some reason, think it's just a community business networking type thing, or way of some sort of brotherly bond between men, and typically men, but yeah, your experience was very different, and it's interesting. A lot of people, what we want to do is shed some light here in this hour, because it's personal what you've experienced. So I'd love to unpack more about this. So what happened next?
So I won't share names or organisations or things like that, but basically what happened was, as part of my role in my job, I was asked to investigate a certain type of business transactions that were going on. And I found some discrepancies, as you would do with these manual processes. There's always going to be errors and so on. But I found these errors were always paying too much in terms of way of commissions and so on, which is a bit odd, but it is what it is. And so the more I investigated, the more I thought, if I could find the cause of the error, then I can improve the business process and save the company money, and everyone's happier, you know, the business goes on.
Yes.
But in investigating this work, I got this file that connects certain people in the organisation to certain transactions and so on. And I found that the source of error, which ended up being millions and millions and millions of dollars, was all connected to the senior Freemasons in the organisation. And that just literally blew me off my seat, you know, when I saw this. And
were you familiar with who the Freemasons were at the time? Like, what was your understanding of what Freemasons were?
Well, funny enough, they actually invited me to join Freemasonry. Okay. Yeah, and the reason I didn't join was, firstly, I didn't know anything about them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was asking questions to people I knew, and some people were saying, yeah, well, you know, why not? Some people didn't know. But the clincher was my local priest, and someone prompted me to ask him, and I wasn't a churchgoer at the time, but I went to Mass just to ask this question. And so when I mentioned to the priest, I guess offered to join Freemasonry, as soon as I said it, it looked like he'd bitten into like a sour lemon. His face was like, this is not good. So and he said, no, don't join. And I stuck to it. I took his advice. Anyway, I told the Masons the next week at work, look, my priest said not to join. I'm not joining, and you could tell they were disappointed. But pretty much straight away, my role changed. So I was out of the job that I was supporting them, and now became part of this other team. Okay. But my first job in this new job was to investigate these transactions, and the computer powering back then wasn't the best, but I had a powerful home PC, and you're actually allowed to use your home PC to do work on. But I didn't have these files, and you needed these massive files because I'm a number cruncher. But to get these files, I had to go out to certain offices to get access to certain people to be able to get these data, all above board, all part of company policy. I'm allowed to do it, and so on. And when I started to play with the data, I couldn't find any patterns. It was just sort of like a random mess of errors, until I got a file that connected these certain advisors to the end amounts. And then as soon as I did a sort by errors and by these advisors, it was like boom in my face. It was like bang, 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 And the overpayment was in the millions. And anyway, wow. I wrote a board paper with my boss. We presented it to the board subcommittees, to the board of directors, and one by one, the Masons all left. They left the organisation. Nothing was ever done to them. They didn't take any criminal activity against them or try to keep the money. And they're still they're still working in the highest paying jobs in the Sydney insurance industry.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. Yeah. And the company suffered. The policyholders suffered because once you take out $20-30 million out of their accounts, they got actual methods that sort of smooth losses over time, but when it's such a big amount, it's going to impact the policyholders. And
yes.
And anyway, that happened. And then towards the end of that period when they were all leaving, I woke up in the middle of the night with a nightmare, absolute nightmare. I woke up, and what I was doing was, in the nightmare, I was sitting above a King's Cross strip club, injecting street drugs with this lady I didn't know. And it was horrifying because that's not me. I wouldn't do that kind of thing. But there I was. It was almost like life, like as if I'm talking to you. I could see it happening in front of me. And I woke up and I saw my young baby asleep. My wife was asleep. This is before the other two, or maybe it was Alex just born. But yeah, and then lo and behold, not much later, I had a chance to what happened? I had a big work night, very drunk one night, and I didn't know what temptation was back then, and it's always, you can't blame temptation, it's always your decision that.
Yes.
But in the end, I was tempted heavily to go to King's Cross and seek out drugs. And this is how naive I was. I didn't know you can get drugs in the Cross. And so I found some drugs, I tried some cocaine. Instead of having just a small amount, I inhaled the whole 1 gram in one go, not realising it's way too much. And the next day I promised myself, never again, what am I doing? I'm a married father, I can't be doing this. But 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, same thing happened, drinking, temptation to try drugs. And this time the lady pulled out of her handbag a syringe. And I thought, what if she needs a syringe? Is she diabetic or something? I don't know. And she said, look, I'm going to inject it, you can do what you want. But then when she said it, I had this lustful rage going through my body. Looking back, it was the devil sort of trying to rouse me up to try it. Anyway, I let her inject me with cocaine, and that was the end of Eddie as I knew it. It's such a powerful drug. And the next time I tried drugs was actually a mixture of heroin and cocaine mixed together, which they call a speedball.
Much more dangerous.
Much more dangerous. Yeah. So my fourth attempt at drugs was speedballs, and that just sort of fell in this cycle of drug use. and I couldn't tell anyone. I was so embarrassed, I was so like wounded inside, like this is not the Eddie I know, like what am I doing? So I kept trying to stop doing it by myself, but a few weeks later, fall back into it.
Were you working at the same company still? Were you still
working?
Yep.
Very functional, getting awards.
Yeah.
I was one of
very successful in your job.
Yeah, I was probably, well, I wouldn't say the best, but one of the top performers. And,
Wow.
Doing really well, and but at the same time, I had this hidden habit of drugs. And like in summer, I used to wear long sleeves to cover up the track marks and all these horrible things. It was just gut wrenching. Like to be honest, I feel really sorry for drug users.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of compassion for them because no one wants to become a drug user. They sort of fall into it by different places.
And you sort of are trapped in.
You get trapped
and become addicted or reliant on this, and
it's
a spiral.
It's just a spiral, and then you get.
How long was this for? How many years? Was it years or was it?
Years, yeah. Started in 2011 was when I had the appendix operation, because actually started with an appendix operation. I had an appendix operation. A week later I had a complication and I got rushed into emergency, and the nurses gave me a injection in my arm of morphine straight into the vein. And as soon as they injected it, I fell back in a pillow and I fell in love with this drug. And so that was the sort of that was the start of it. And
how did you get off it? What happened to get you out of that usage?
Out of that usage, I almost died a few times. People trying to take my life, extortion attempts, you name it. But on the end, what happened was I got the kick to the head. I got a kick in the head. I got a concussion.
A literal kick to the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was like a massive bang. And looking back, God was waking me up. He's giving me a second chance. We gave me many second chances.
And you were not practicing your faith at all at this point.
No.
Heavy drug use.
Heavy drug use. But thanks be to God, my mum was praying for me. She's got a big devotion to St. Anthony. She's got this magazine called St. Anthony's Messenger. She writes little prayer requests, unbeknownst to me. She's been, and my auntie's a nun, a Franciscan nun in Croatia. So she was praying for me, I'm sure. And people at work were praying for me. I really didn't realise that the man who worked across from me at work, he's a fervent practicing Catholic. And I remember I told him I did Reiki, and he goes, "You're into that satanic stuff, aren't you?" And I didn't
Reiki, right? Yeah, I remember you mentioned this before. What is Reiki?
Reiki is a type of laying of hands healing, developed in Japan. It's supposedly you put your hands on someone, you don't touch them, but you can actually feel this heat coming off your hands. And it supposedly heals people. And so I thought, I like healing, I'm going to become a Reiki practitioner. But it's all demonic. It's all the demons who produce the effects, the heat. And unfortunately, the devil's very, very cunning. He's very deceptive, and he works through our senses. He works through giving us these sensations or thoughts or things like that.
So it did have an impact on you. You remember experiences during your Reiki treatment? Do you call it as a type of?
Yeah, Reiki. Reiki treatments. They call it Reiki. It's like a different name, but basically, through the sessions of Reiki, you experience things, and I was completely fooled into believing this is good and holy, and I remember opening the Bible one day and seeing the apostles laying of hands. I thought, that must be Reiki they're doing, and so I started for Reiki business, and in the process of setting up the Reiki business, I was inviting my friends to do Reiki on them. But then I had a really terrible experience one day. I put my hands on them and I felt this evil energy just come into me. Like I just knew this is not from God. Wow. But I didn't know who to turn to. But I thought if God could hear that prayer in hospital after I got the anointing of the sick, I don't know if I told you that, because when I was in hospital, I was almost dead from infections after all the operations.
Because you had the kick to the head, you had the heavy usage of drugs, and that was having a huge impact negatively on your health.
Negatively on my health. And then in hospital, I was almost dead from infections. The infections, my head was like this.
Wow. Infection
was leaking out of these holes, and the doctors said...
Was that linked to the kick, or was that linked to something else?
It was linked to the infections I got after the operations.
Yeah, okay.
And I was almost deaf from these infections when a priest walked in my room, and I was so excited to see the priest. I remember feeling this joy. But on the other hand, I was quite scared because there's a priest coming to see you, and but what happened was he gave me the anointing of the sick. He put these oils on my hands, my forehead. He said some prayers, and he left. And after he left, I just felt this beautiful feeling come over me, like I had to pray. And so I said a little prayer. Next morning I woke up, the rash was gone. 3 days later I'm home with Mum. And I started telling everyone, I think God's real. I think He's real. I think He can hear prayers.
So you had not been practicing your faith at this point?
Nothing.
You had this experience?
Had this experience.
And you just felt the urge to share that with people. This is real.
It was amazing. It was amazing. You know, I started to pray more, and He answered more prayers. And then He...
Were you still taking the drugs at this point? Or were you still,
when I was in hospital, I stopped.
Okay.
Yeah. I was probably overdoing it on some of the endones and things like that in the hospital, but not to the same degree.
Okay. And work, were you just time off work during this whole time? You still had your role at the job you were at?
Yeah, I was actually changing jobs to work at a different company, and that kept it open for me for a long time, so I was very grateful for that. But yeah, I just wanted to change. I just wanted to get out of the situation. At one point I wanted to join the French Foreign Legion. I just wanted to get out.
Oh.
I wanted to just...
That's hardcore.
Yeah. I just wanted to get out, because I could see my life spiralling down, this abyss. And I thought,
Are you married at this point and during this time?
Yeah, I was married. Yeah.
You had children?
Children,
at that time?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hurt a lot of people. I hurt my wife, hurt my kids, hurt my whole family. But
were they familiar with your lifestyle?
No one knew.
No, it was like a double life.
Double life. No one knew. Yeah. No one knew. But thanks be to God, God's helped heal our relationships. And He works in amazing ways. He really does. Like, out of all the hurt that I caused people, He's helped them forgive me, and it's really amazing. Amazing to see what God's grace can do in our life. Once we turn to Him and say yes, we just keep saying yes, and He keeps blessing us.
May praise God. This is all in your book. You've written this down.
It's all in the book. There's much more detail.
Yes.
There's much more detail, and it sort of it walks through. The first part of the book is very much chronological, so you can read through it. The second half is more about topical. It's still almost chronological, but it's more focused on specific aspects of Freemasonry, why it's evil, why it's...
You did a lot of research in this area. Could you tell us about that? So, I mean, the title of the book, you're linking it clearly with Freemasonry. Can we unpack that a bit? Because I know you've had many different supernatural experiences, but specifically with Freemasonry, what inspired you to dive in a deep study about this topic?
It actually wasn't me.
Okay.
I had one chapter, which it was going to be the shortest chapter, chapter 11, and I just had one quote that I found online. It said something along the lines of that Freemasons worship Lucifer and so on. It's a short. It's still a book. This quote. But when it came time to edit the book, I wanted it to have footnotes, so people can refer to these books themselves. It's not. And
there are plenty of those in this book.
There's plenty of those. And I didn't want it to be, this is just Eddie's opinion. This is, you want to research it. Here's the books. Go look at yourself. Here's the evidence. And anyway, the first quote I had was quite damning against Freemasonry, and I thought, okay, that's done. Tick, that box done. Until I tried to find the source of this quote. And then it ended up being part of this hoax called the Taxel Affair. And there's many sort of theories about where this came from, but it's quite obvious that it's been discredited and so on. So the main source of my I guess, retort against Freemasonry in terms of that they worship Lucifer and so on was gone. Like the evidence is gone.
No evidence that they do that.
Yeah.
Wow. Nothing in writing officially.
I thought, what am I going to do now? Anyway, I started to pray. And I prayed and I begged God, please show me the truth. And then I found one book, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books, 5 books, and I ended up going through over 200 books.
200 books on the topic of Freemasonry.
And it's just,
there are that many books out there on this topic.
There's a lot.
Wow.
And it also coincided with COVID, so I had all the ministries I was doing stopped,
Yes.
and then all this time to work on the book. And it's quite clear, you'll see in the book with the quotes, and how it's not just one, because one thing Freemasons do is they have this official, this is Freemasonry, but then they've got underlying, this is what Freemasonry really is. But so if anyone tries to point to, look, this is the evil truth, they say, oh no, that's just the opinion of the Freemason, that's not Freemasonry. But once you get enough of the senior Freemasons all saying the same thing, it's quite obvious that this is what their true beliefs are.
You discovered this through your research?
Through the research.
Yeah,
and the research was really interesting. It was, the first book I read was called, was by a guy called J.D. Buck. And he just happened to be a footnote in a book by a Jesuit priest. And the book was supported by Pope Leo XIII, who translated it and made it public in Rome. And I came across this footnote, and it just sort of struck me. You know, I read the book, but then I was inspired to read it again. Like God inspired me to read it again and again. And then I thought, oh, this is how it works. And they hide a lot of how they write these books to disguise the truth. And I go through this in the book, and they also go through this in their book, how they disguise the truth. Because if they say, we've got a pentagram on the floor of the lodge, we've got a satanic statue, we worship the devil, people, they're going to leave, they're not going to stay around. But yet this is what actually happens.
They have these things.
They have these things.
And they're quite obviously there, but you won't know unless you go in or have eyes to see.
And they tell the junior members lies to tell them this is called the blazing star, this is what the three wise men followed. But later on you see, no, this is the star of Lucifer that they worship and all that.
I'm amazed, there's a lot of religious symbolism in Freemasonry. For something that's supposed to be a network of businessmen or, you know, some sort of corporate community type scenario on the outside, you know, what's with all the religious symbolism?
So there's a few aspects of it. One is to disguise what they're writing in their books. So they'll use the name of our Lord, they'll use the name of God, they'll use the name of religious symbolism to cover up what they're saying. Sometimes even in the very same sentence, they'll call on our Lord's name. So it confuses the reader to sort of thinking, oh, this is good and holy, or they're talking about my God, the one I worship in church. So there's sort of that aspect, but that gets unpacked by the Masons themselves in their writings, and I covered this in one of the sections. And the other aspect is their God is Lucifer. So when they talk about their God, it's actually Lucifer. So when you're reading through it, if you just keep that in mind, then it makes much more sense.
Now, someone joining for the first time or early on would not make this connection. You know,
No.
some would claim,
No.
hang on, I go to church on Sunday, or I go to the mosque, or go to the synagogue. They would not make that claim.
Yeah.
So how do you make this claim?
So how do they do it? They basically lie to junior members, and they're very obvious in how they do it. So in their books, like one of the senior Masons is a guy called Pike, and he's got a book called Morals and Dogma, which is sort of like their highest ranking book, I guess, in terms of their teachings and so on.
Written by them. This is them promoting.
Promoting.
Okay.
And in there, he goes through details about the levels of deception and how they fool people and so on. But from the outsider, the way they've written that book is quite deceptive, because you just sort of skim through it without paying too much attention. But it's quite clear in that book that they worship Lucifer. It's actually got a quote in there, and other books as well. But so one method they use is to call on our Lord's name to confuse the reader to believe that they're talking about the God they worship in their own religion, and also then to disguise what they're saying. So for example, another example would be they might start a paragraph saying it's a pity for the need to conceal something, and then they'll talk about what they want to conceal, and then they say at the end of the same paragraph, of course what we just said is completely rubbish and, you know, it's not true and all that. But they sort of revealed the truth in a way that the Mason would attribute it to it. And there's two types of Masons. Well, there's a few types. The two main types. There's the occult Mason, who practices the occult, who believes in the devil, who believes in casting spells, black magic and so forth, which is a small number, and a lot of them are possessed by the devil. And there's another portion which are good men trying to live good lives, completely oblivious to what's happening.
Would they be the majority, would you think?
Yeah, by far, yeah. And that's all confirmed by Masons in writing these books. They actually call it out, saying the majority are these. I think they call them breeding grounds to pick out the occult Masons. And they get tested heavily. They get really tested, challenged. So
what type of challenges would that be?
If they reveal a hidden truth that they shouldn't do, out. So they really have to be
There
trusted.
is a secrecy about Freemasonry. The church has spoken against many times in its past secret societies and things like that. It's frowned upon. We shouldn't be having any secrets, so to speak, like that. So that's a major point. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's different methods that's in the book, and I've also got footnotes. If people are interested, they can refer to the other footnotes and get much more details.
Yeah. I encourage your viewers to do that if they get the copy of this book. Would you say this book is almost like a summary of I guess the problems with Freemasonry, or a bit of an insight to the history and what it's aiming to do? Can someone read your book and learn a lot about the Freemason I guess agenda?
Yeah, good question. So the book does touch on a bit of the history, a bit about where they've come from, what they do, and so on. But I guess the biggest thing is what they're doing now, how they're destroying the Catholic Church, how they're going about corrupting people, corrupting priests, corrupting morals, and so on. Wow. So there's a whole section about there.
That's a big claim because, and I'd like to unpack that a bit. But if they're not about religion, and the idea on the surface is all religions are equal,
right,
why single out the Catholic Church? Is that in your research you've discovered that?
That's it.
Okay,
yeah.
please unpack that. Why?
Yeah, so so J.D. Bike writes a book called The Genius of Freemasonry, and he goes through that in detail. And he singles out the Catholic Church to be their arch enemy, and he goes through the details of why, exactly why and what they're doing about it. And there's other documents in there too, which some have been revealed through other Catholic books, good Catholic authors, Jesuit priests and so on, endorsed by popes and so on, that speak about this is what they're doing. They're trying to corrupt morals, they're trying to corrupt the teachings of the church. Specifically, they want to get Catholics out of the state of grace. They want, once they're out of the state of grace, you're sort of, your power, you're
exposed, exactly.
Yeah, and they try to bring in laws. They try to stack parliaments. In France, for example, I can't remember exact statistics. It's in the book, but something like less than 1% of French people are Masons, but yet 35% or so of Parliament members are Masons, and they've got an official group in there who collate or gather, I guess, these Masons to vote in their views as Freemasons against their party lines to get things over the line. And they specifically talk about, same-sex marriage and things like that. So recent examples of pushing these demonic laws through.
Would you say, was there a organised effort here?
Organised, intentional.
It seemed certainly, over the last at least decade, if not decades, we've seen big issues. That we had the whole marriage debate, the plebiscite there, but there was also, we've had debates. Abortion from years ago, and it's interesting. Here we are this year celebrating this side of Roe v. Wade now being turned over, but how we have abortion and then other laws on what redefining marriage, and now euthanasia is another big one, and there's all these other laws now just on freedom of religion, and that's been under attack right now. But interesting. It's sort of like all the efforts on these individual topics. It's not like scattered. It's very organised and very deliberate and very strategic, isn't it?
And interesting, what I found in the book as well is how it's organised. How it's organised. So one of the aims of Freemasonry, the spiritual aims, is to become possessed by the devil. So
Wow.
and they basically not all do, but they become satanic saints, and so through meditation they'll communicate to the devil, or devil communicates to them and tells them what to do, gives them instructions.
Again, not everyone. This is because again, the majority would probably disagree with that. However, this
a far majority, I would say even 95%.
wow. So it's a select few that go to this level.
A select level, and
Okay.
they've got rituals in place. They've got clear methods of achieving that demonic possession, and that's covered in the book, including how the devil leads them into it, because it's the devil. The devil ultimately pushes certain Masons into that category, or into that direction. Not all say yes, but
Satan's been at work since the beginning of time, hasn't he? And
yeah.
still is today. He is the one enemy, really. We don't have various enemies. It's just Satan ultimately, and he's the one influencing a lot of the darkness in the world today. And this is one example.
This is one example, yeah.
Wow.
And it's and so then you've got also so you got that part at work, and then you've got those same Masons leading other Masons to follow them, but unbeknownst to them. So they've got secret handshakes, code words, and so forth. They do favours to each other. So they might say, look, just wait for this, and you'll get something out of it, or whatever.
Some material gain.
Some gain
Okay.
or something,
Yep.
or maybe a political gain, maybe a promotion or something. But they don't know where this is coming from. They just say, okay, I'm going to vote for same-sex marriage, or I'm going to vote for this, I'm going to vote for that. And unfortunately, who's behind it is the devil pushing it. But there's good news. There's good news. So the good news is Our Lady. Our Lady is the good news. She at Fatima, she singled out communism, but she never said communism. She said the errors of Russia.
Yeah, that's right.
And she gave us, so that was one enemy vehicle released by Satan to destroy the church, and she gave us the means to destroy it. Consecration, the first Saturday devotions, and so on. Now, she's now revealed there's a second enemy vehicle released by Satan to destroy the church, which is Masonry. But she didn't leave us defenceless. She didn't leave us defenceless.
When did she reveal that? Where do you make that claim? So
Good question. Good question. So the way that it was revealed to me was, because it wasn't all revealed at once, it was sort of in stages. The first time was after I offered those 33 masses, and I could write quite clearly about how Freemasonry had impacted my life. Not long after that, I was shown, when I joined the Legion of Mary as an auxiliary member, I was revealed more then, and over time, where I could see the connection between Freemasonry and Fatima. For example, I could see how Fatima was, a prefigurement. So Guadalupe, for example, was a prefigurement to Fatima. So Guadalupe, you've got Our Lady,
yes.
and a great portent appeared in the heavens, but she wasn't in the heavens; it was on a tumor.
Yes.
So you got the sun.
Yes.
You got she's standing on the moon.
Yes.
And so what that in Fatima is we obviously see the big dancing sun behind her, and the moon she's standing she's on the moon of the Mohammedans, the crescent moon, and we've also again got now. Okay, so Fatima is in history. It's cemented down. The 13th of October was a great miracle of the dancing sun.
Yes.
And God's timing is perfect, because you look at the timing of when communism came, when she revealed the communists, the errors of Russia. There was no problem in Russia until the revolution happened and so on. Then it was quite clear. This is what
About that same time.
About the same time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, so Maximilian Kolbe, in that same year, that was actually the bicentenary of Freemasonry, or modern Freemasonry, was 1917. And there's more evidence in the book with Pope Leo XIII, years before that. But to get to the sort of the end bit.
Yes.
So Maximilian Kolbe, he started the militia Immaculata. as a response, saying, we can't just sit there and do nothing. Let's pray. We'll pray for them. So the main thing is to pray, make sacrifices, pray for the conversion of Masons, and other things. And so with Sir Maximilian Kolbe, he started this group called the Militia Immaculata exactly 3 days after the day of the Dancing Sun, so the 16th, wow. The 16th of October. So the weapon to destroy Freemasonry is the Militia Immaculata. But why the 13th of October? Why did Our Lady pick that day? Why not the 15th or the 12th? Or it's because the Freemasons strongly believe in the Knights Templar. I don't know if you're familiar with the Knights Templar.
I've heard of them, yeah, history, yep.
They believe that they were unfairly taken down, and the raids actually happened on the 13th of October, back in the day. So that was the start of the end of the Knights Templar. And so the 13th of October is sort of the beginning of the end of modern Freemasonry. So,
wow.
So a lady is working through through history, working through this time frame, and our job is to join the militia, and to follow Our Lady and to do the will of God.
Wow.
But our job is to join, get involved, and Our Lady does the rest. She'll provide the grace.
Let's talk about that. So what's involved? What the militia? So what's this? A group of people following Our Lady or consecrated to Our Lady? What do you do in this?
Basically, the militia is sort of like in times of war, where a group of people come out, get called to fight, like an organised army, more unorganised.
Okay.
And you might have the Legion of Mary, which is much more organised in legions and structured meetings and so on. The militia are a bit more unorganised. But basically, it's a call for prayer, sacrifice, distribute the miraculous medals, and they've got like a short rule they follow.
Okay.
But the end goal, one of the aims of it, is to destroy Freemasonry, and this is all going back from day dot with Sir Maximilian Kolbe, and they do good works. They feed the poor and so on.
Wow.
But you basically have to be Catholic.
Yep.
You consecrate yourself to Our Lady.
Yep.
There's a daily prayer you say. You have to get involved into the militia, which is quite a straightforward process.
Okay.
I think in Sydney they do it through the Shrine of the Holy Innocents up at Kerrville.
Yep.
And it's a global movement. It's a global thing. But
there is a group in Sydney that you're a part of.
Yeah. So the group I'm a part of is called the Knights of the Immaculata.
Yes.
So we immerse ourselves in doing good works. We have the evangelisation, helping the homeless, praying for the Holy Souls in Purgatory, all different events. We're a small group, but we get together regularly. We organise upcoming events. Sometimes we get called on by priests to help venerate relics, or we just immerse ourselves as best we can to do God's work.
Some good people there, yeah. Michael Abid and others.
Michael,
doing great work.
Alex,
Dwayne, champion.
There's a good group.
Great team of people. Good.
But I think this is going to spread big time. The militia, not just our group, but I think it's going to spread.
It's interesting. I think I shared with you off air. Just yesterday, out of the blue, a friend of mine, a retired priest, just called me to say, have you joined the Knights of the Immaculata? And I said, no, I haven't, not formally anyway. I'm familiar with them. And he said, yeah, I think we need to promote this and grow it. And look at this, the day after, here we are talking about it. And just amazing. Interesting. No coincidences here.
God's timing's perfect.
So if people want to know about that, where do they go for that? Where could you direct them?
There's a Franciscan friar called Brother Louis. I think he's based in Melbourne now, but you can always approach the friars at Kerrville, and they'll send you like an enrolment form, give you some history, and and you can use either consecration. You can use the consecration written by St. Maximin Kolbe, or some people prefer the 33-day consecration by St. Louis de Montfort.
Yes.
They're both equally, you can choose which one.
We do distribute those books of St. Louis de Montfort's consecration, but I'd like to find out more about St. Maximilian Kolbe's one too. We'll promote that. That's important. So Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church in Keelerville have the friars that are based there, which is in northwest Sydney. People can just go on, get in touch with the friars, and just ask, I want to join the Knights of the Immaculata, and then they could direct you.
They can direct you.
Okay, very good, very good. Let's try do that. Encourage people to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing is to just make sure you're enrolled in their official enrolment. Like booklet, which is straightforward. Once you fill the form, you get enrolled.
All right, excellent. And then this is separate to the Legion of Mary. This is separate again. So Legion of Mary, a shout out for that. Join that. Legion of Mary doing amazing work.
Join both. I joined both. It's
excellent.
Different work, both extremely rewarding.
Wow.
The Legion of Mary, you do door knocking. It's amazing the conversations you have with people, because what they're very much structured. They've got the frontline people who go knocking on doors, evangelising. Then some people aren't called for that. They become prayer warriors. So they're praying for the people who go out.
Wow.
And I've experienced some amazing conversations and graces to come through that. Thank God.
I have to do a shout out. I noticed you're wearing the Miraculous Medal as well, and many thousands and thousands, I think it's in the hundreds of thousands now, just in Australia alone, of people who've been enrolled having the Miraculous Medal. I have to say he's in Australia right now, Father Joseph McShane, who used to give talks, and he's part of the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculata.
Wow.
So they have a fourth vow to Our Lady, and great. And now Tony Matter in Sydney is doing great work, making them and distributing them in the masses. So we might get him on the show to talk about that as well. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. Tony does great work.
Now, Eddie, if we're running out of time, but I'd love to just maybe in closing here, you've written the book. We're very excited that this is going to get out there, shed some light on this very important topic. But most importantly, how God has worked in your life and your new creation, as we say. Your final message, I guess, to those watching this and those encouragement, who needs to read this book? Why should they read this book? And what's your goal with it?
Look, the one thing I want to tell people is God loves you. He loves you more than you can imagine. One thing I was shown as part of my conversion experience was God loves everyone on this planet. He really does. It's a burning love we don't understand. But He wants us to love Him back. He wants us to say yes. And this book, it's got a clear call to action. You'll see in the last chapter, it's a clear call to action. And I encourage everyone to read the book and to say yes. Say yes to that, to the calling, and to keep saying yes. To keep saying yes, Even though you're busy, even though you've got a lot of things on, God's got this amazing ability. Once you say yes, He clears the path. He does really clear the path. He gives it extra time. He might get rid of something that's not really useful in your life, but he just keeps saying yes to God, love Him with all your heart, and do your best. He's got a place for every single person in heaven. He wants us to get there, but we have to cooperate with that grace. We can't just sit back, watch TV, But once we say yes to God, He sees that yes, and He comes running towards us, and He just keeps saying yes. That's the best advice I can give.
Very well said.
But I hope you enjoyed the book, and may God bless you all, and thanks, Charbel, for having me on the show.
No, thank you for joining us. Now, God bless you, praying. And it's my wish, we're going to pray for healing. Look, we don't know. As you said, the doctors have given you barely a month to live, but I hope it's longer than that, and you're still with us at the launch of the book. But if you're not, I'll be praying for you. Think of us when you're up there looking down on us and praying for us. We're praying for you. And
thanks, Charbel.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eddie. God bless you.
God bless you too, Charbel.
And thank you, everyone, for watching us. Another Parousia Podcast. I hope you were touched by this very, it's a hard-hitting topic in Freemasonry, and we've got many resources on this topic. But a call to action, as you heard today, get the book. And order it today. It's on our website, parousiamedia.com, and get a copy for yourself or for friends. Educate yourself about it, but ultimately, what is it? Showing the power of God in this man's life and the power of God, what He can do in your life. So thanks again. Until next time. God bless.